Part 5. Fantasy, me. Create a secret building at the beginning. Author, Mavericks Flying. Chapter 41. I take the liberty of visiting you, and I hope my seniors won't be surprised. The Lord of Dawang City cupped his hand and said apologetically. Then, he stretched out his hand and introduced Senior, I am here today, and I have brought someone with me. This person is His Royal Highness the 9th Prince of the Tianyin Dynasty. Li Yun said with a smile. Well. The Lord of Dawang City stopped talking and said with a dry smile, I almost forgot that nothing in the world can be hidden from the eyes of my seniors. Baikan Hung, I have met the senior. At this time, Bei Chen Hung took a step forward, not daring to drag him out at all, and bowed respectfully. If he had been a little confused about Ren Qingtu and Yang Qiu before, when he saw Li Yun's expression in an instant, he understood. The strength of the senior exceeded his own knowledge. He was definitely an unimaginable master. Li Yun nodded, pointed to a chair not far away, and said, sit down. Then he opened Baikan Heng's panel and glanced at it as if nothing had happened. Name, Baikan Hung. Strength, Peak of Tianyuan Realm, Peak of Holy Lord level. Affiliated Force, Tianyin Dynasty. Kung Fu, the great technique of devouring heaven and devouring earth. Ken, alias, Neiwan Shenju Ken. Supernatural powers, Emperor Genkuo Fist. Ken, Emperor Wu Sword Technique. Ken, do not fall into the sky. Yang. Ken, Meteor Sword Hidden Edge. Ken, Demon Sword Technique 13 moves. Weapon, Shocking Sword, Holy Master level. Current situation, abnormal state. Because of practicing Nai Yuan Shenju, I feel uneasy and worried that my father will take back all my cultivation. I want to get rid of control, but I am unable to do so. Click to see more. He's really a hard-working person. Li Yun clicked his tongue. Glancing over. There is nothing in this dignified 9th prince of the Tianyin dynasty that can be called intact. His cultivation techniques are just incomplete. Even his magical powers are mostly incomplete. And this was the first time Li Yun had seen a Holy Lord figure with only one Holy Lord level weapon on his body. Before, whether it was Ren Qingtu or Yang Qiu, which one was not rich? Even Yang Qiu had 2 Holy Lord level weapons on his body, as well as other Celestials Yang Celestial Transformation level magic weapons, not to mention, he could easily throw out a bunch of them. Turn around and look at Bei Chen Hung. Li Yun couldn't help but feel sad for him. Can a dynasty be so poor? Can't even take out a complete book of exercises? Obviously unlikely. If the Tianyin dynasty was so weak, it would have been destroyed long ago, and it would not have persisted until now, if it were not for the problems of the Tianyin dynasty. Then Baikan Heng's current state is interesting. Now that fellow Daoist Baikan is here, Li will not beat around the bush anymore. You must already know where the Tianji Tower is. Li Yun took a sip of tea and got straight to the point. Although the juniors have guesses in their minds, they are not sure. Bei Chen Hung was moved in his heart and asked Senior, I dare to ask, is Tianji Tower related to Tianji? Haven't you already made the adjustments clearly? For example, Ren Qingtu becomes a saint. Li Yun raised his head and looked at Bei Chen Hung, half smiling but not smiling. Ah! Baikan Hung felt a wave of waves deep in his heart. He did have some guesses before, but he was never sure. Today, after listening to the senior, he finally understood this matter. Ren Qingtu's becoming a saint must be like this. There are seniors giving guidance behind my back. What's more important is, this senior actually knew that he was investigating him behind his back. Just ask. That senior, is he willing to be investigated? Not to mention some experts, even I don't want to be investigated secretly. After all, No one knows what the intentions of the people investigating me are. Think of this. A layer of cold sweat suddenly broke out on Bai Chen-heng's body. Rest assured. Li Yun smiled faintly and said Tianji Tower only does business and does not care about anything else. If you want to investigate, just do it. I appeared in this world out of thin air. If Bai Chen-heng can really investigate and find out something, then there is something wrong with him. Thank you for your generosity, senior. Hearing this, Bai Chen-heng felt as if he had been pardoned. He breathed a sigh of relief and cupped his hands and said. For a moment just now, he thought that his life was about to come to an end. How could he be able to fawn over someone who even King Tu had to fawn over? Can you afford to provoke it? After all, although the Tianyin dynasty is not weak, it is not stronger than the Deluo sword sect. It's just that the ancestors of both sides did not come forward. The great Luo sword sect has lost its ancestor, and its strength has dropped by more than one level. If we really fight with all our strength, we might not be able to defeat the Tianyin dynasty. The senior said that Tianji Tower only does business. Could it be that Ren Qingtu became a saint before, trade? Bai Chen-heng asked tentatively. If not, Li Yun asked back. This. Bai Chen-heng's eyes lit up, and his eyes flashed. An expert who could even trade the chance of becoming a saint, then if he could be like Ren Qingtu. Wouldn't it be possible to break one's own crisis easily? Senior, that sanctification. Bai Chen-heng said excitedly. Before he finished speaking, he was interrupted by Li Yun. In your current situation, it is impossible to become a saint. Li Yun said unceremoniously, the skills you practice are too incomplete. You can only practice to the Holy Lord level. What you lack now is not only the opportunity to become a saint, but also the follow-up skills. More importantly, Li Yun paused and said slowly, if my guess is correct, the exercises you practice are not the original ones, but are derived from another exercise. The relationship between the two is like that of a monarch and his ministers, which is exactly what the saying goes, if the monarch wants his minister to die, he must die. Fantasy, me. Create a secret building at the beginning. Author, Mavericks Flying. Chapter 42. The words fell to the ground. Time seems to have stopped at this moment. Bai Chen-heng's expression froze. This is his biggest secret, and also his father's biggest secret. Over the years, outsiders have no way of knowing. He himself has thought of many ways to break the situation. In the end it was all in vain. Did not expect. Today, the Tianji building owner in front of me casually pointed it out with just one glance. Senior, do you know this technique? Bai Chen-heng asked extremely excitedly. Then, does the senior have any way to solve the shortcomings of this technique? It's just a method of swallowing the sky and the earth. Li Yun wrote lightly. Devour the sky and the earth, da fa. Bai Chen-heng looked strange. This seemed to be a little different from what he knew. He was obviously not practicing this technique. Oh, right. Li Yun seemed to have remembered something and continued, what you are practicing is incomplete. It has another name, called Neiwan Zhenju. This technique does not have any requirements for cultivation qualifications, because this technique is not for the master to practice at all, but for the subordinates to practice. As long as the master is willing, he can transform the subordinates' cultivation into several bodies at any time. Is Li right? Li Yunkin said. If I guess correctly, the 9 highnesses of the Tianyin dynasty have all practiced this technique, and the original version of Naun Shenju is in the hands of Emperor Tianyin. After saying this, Bai Chen-heng had not responded yet. Next to him, the lord of Dawang City took a deep breath, widened his eyes, looked at Li Yun in disbelief, and then looked at Bai Chen-heng. Today, he seemed to know. What a great secret! When he heard the senior say it just now, he immediately understood what the so-called Neiwan Shenju was. This kind of technique, in the final analysis, is a magic technique. Transferring the results of other people's cultivation to oneself, this if it's not magic power, what is this? In the early years, countless people discussed that the 8 highnesses of the Tianyin dynasty died in extremely strange ways. He was still wondering at first, but he didn't expect this to be the case. Tiger poison does not even eat its seeds. This day, God Emperor Yin actually attacked his own son directly and killed 8 of them in a row. What a vicious method. The seniors have clever calculations, and the juniors admire them. Baikan Hung smiled miserably and said bitterly. The truth of the matter is exactly as Li Yun said. He didn't feel dissatisfied at all when Li Yun said it. After all, the initiator was not him, but his father. It would be embarrassing if it was spread. It's just his father. Moreover, this matter will be exposed sooner or later. It can be hidden for a while, but not forever. The scandal of Tianyin dynasty is almost destined to be exposed to the eyes of the world. After all, Tianyin God Emperor has no cultivation qualifications. This matter is not a secret in the major holy places. If he cultivates to the Holy Lord level, outsiders will think that the Tianyin dynasty spent a huge price to help him get there, but if he becomes a saint, then it's different. Many wonderful and beautiful people are blocked from the threshold of sanctification. But a person without qualifications becomes a saint. Who can bear it? By then, countless people will be curious about what secrets are hidden in this. After the major forces investigated, it was not too difficult to find out the truth of the matter. Bei Chenhung took a deep breath, stood up slowly, walked to Li Yun, bowed and said in a deep voice, since the senior can recognize this technique, he must have a way to save the junior's life. I also ask the seniors to give your guidance without hesitation. When things are done, the juniors will be rewarded generously. You are right, Li does have a way to save you, and there is more than one way. Li Yun glanced at Bei Chenhung, and Feng Qingyun said calmly, but the rule of Tianji Tower is that one hand pays the money and the other hand delivers the goods, and there is no credit. More than one. Bei Chenhung was stunned. He automatically ignored the second half of what he said. Is this the senior? He has been looking for a way to break the situation for thousands of years, but he still has no clue. Every time he thinks of the fate of the 8 royal brothers, he is frightened and afraid. One day it will be my turn. But I didn't expect that senior could easily give out more than one method. Baikan Hung thought for a long time, and a skill appeared in his hand, and he handed it to him respectfully. Senior, there is really nothing valuable about this junior. This martial emperor sword technique was created by our ancestors. I wonder if it can reach the eyes of our seniors. Li Yun glanced at the secret book and did not answer immediately. This skill is incomplete. It's just that Bei Chenhung didn't know it. His father had been guarding him. None of the skills given was complete. Relying on the incomplete, even Li Yun himself cannot guarantee how many secret points can be exchanged for the martial emperor sword art. System, how many secret points can be exchanged for this martial emperor sword art? Li Yun asked in his heart. Ding, Emperor Wu's sword art, remnant, can be exchanged for 800 TNG points. Really? Crazy low. It's about the same price as a broken Holy Lord level weapon. It can be seen from this. How incomplete is the sword art? After all, it is a technique created by the ancestors of the Tianyin dynasty. Even in Hanhuang, it cannot be so cheap. System, search to see if there is any way to help Baikan Heng solve its own hidden dangers. Li Yun said again in his heart. Undead Island, 8 million secret points are required, and the specific location can be found. Tomb of the Great Emperor of 100 Wars, 7.5 million TNG points are required, and the specific location can be found. Tomb of Emperor Zikan, 4.62 million TNG points are required. You can check the specific location. System, can you give me some reliable news? What kind of news do you think Baikonghang can afford given his current conditions? Li Yun said quietly after a moment of silence. Big discount for Dragon Boat Festival reading. Recharge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Grab a deposit now. Event time, June 22nd to June 24th. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Fantasy, me. Create a secret building at the beginning. Author, Mavericks Flying. Chapter 43. Devouring Heaven and Earth, full version 1.5 million TNG points are required. You can check the specific whereabouts. Borrowing luck to become a saint, supernatural power 10,000 secret points are required, and the specific whereabouts can be found. Well, that's pretty much it. Seeing the two new options given by the system, Li Yun nodded with satisfaction. Although the Emperor's tomb is good, it must be affordable. With Baikonghang's current situation, an Emperor's scripture and an Emperor's weapon can be used. Easily solve all hidden dangers, but only if he can afford so many secret points. Judging from the fact that his cultivation techniques are all incomplete, selling him will not buy the news about the tomb of the great Emperor. This is a good thing to become a saint by luck, high quality and low price. Li Yun had an idea in his mind. He withdrew his gaze, looked at Baikonghang, and said if it were the complete Emperor Wu sword art, it might be valuable enough, but it's a pity, the book in your hand is too badly damaged. What? Baikonghang's body trembled. He couldn't help but clenched the hands holding the Emperor Wu's sword art. His complexion suddenly turned pale. He understood the meaning of the senior's words in an instant. He was not a fool, senior. With a hint, he quickly figured out the key. It was his father. Baikonghang's heart felt cold. It turned out that his father had never believed in him, and even the magical powers he gave him were incomplete. Once he plotted rebellion with his heart, he can conclude that he is no one's opponent. His father can crush him without any effort. What about this one? Baikonghang did not give up and took out another secret book. The Emperor's Suppressing Fist. The Tianyan dynasty's national suppressing magical power can be said to be a must-learn magical power for every generation of god emperors. In addition to the main lineage, the side lineage cannot practice. Also incomplete. Li Yun glanced at it and said lightly. Really? Baikonghang's face became paler. Everything his father gave him was incomplete. Incomplete magical powers must have great shortcomings. Thinking about the 8 royal brothers before him, they were just like himself. Before. He was still confused. His brother, the 6th emperor, was extremely talented and practiced very fast. He had few opponents among his peers. After reaching the Holy Lord level, he was unwilling to become a puppet and wanted to force his father to abdicate. In the end, he met his own father. But it was quickly suppressed. It turns out that there are all traps here. It's enough to use incomplete magical powers to fight with outsiders. After all, outsiders are not familiar with it, but when dealing with one's own people, any missing point is enough to be fatal. Because Divine Emperor Tianyan, the magical powers he cultivated were also the Emperor's Guo fist and the Emperor Wu's sword technique. Wow! Baikonghang gritted his teeth. At this moment, he poured out everything in his storage ring, including all the skills and magical powers he had mastered, and even took out the sky-devouring and earth-devouring method. Since my father is unkind, why would he treat these incomplete magical powers as treasures? He might as well take them all out and make a deal with his seniors. If it works, his life is safe. If it doesn't work, these things are external to him and have nothing to do with him. Are these senior resources enough? System, how many TNG points are these things worth? Li Yun asked in his heart. 10 million top-grade spiritual stones, 5 million top-grade spiritual stones, 9 bottles of Holy Lord level elixirs, 16 Holy Lord level spiritual herbs, and several supernatural powers and techniques. 36,000 TNG points can be redeemed. Oh! Li Yun raised his eyebrows. It seems that Bei Chenheng is not as poor as he thought. He is also the 9th prince after all. God Emperor Tianyin only needs to guard against his son in terms of skills. He will definitely not be stingy with other resources, because he needs his son to practice quickly. After all, his 9 sons are like 9 power banks. The power banks are not fully charged, so how can he use them? Enough. Li Yun nodded, collected all the resources casually, and then said in his heart system, exchange the whereabouts of Luck Saint. Ding. Deducting 10,000 TNG points, the whereabouts of Saint Luck was successfully inquired. The method of becoming a saint through luck is a secret technique unique to the Dali dynasty. Click to view details. After its collapse, the method of becoming a saint through luck was lost in the treasure house of the Tianyin dynasty. The specific whereabouts have been saved in the jade slips by the system. Please check it yourself. Unexpectedly, the Tianyin dynasty and the Dali dynasty had some connections. This Dali dynasty was destroyed by the Tianyin dynasty. Li Yun glanced at the introduction of the Dali dynasty, then looked away. A jade slip appeared in his hand, and he threw it towards Bei Chenheng. This is Li's method. Do you think I can agree with you? Bei Chenheng took the jade slip, entered it with his spiritual consciousness, took a closer look, and suddenly took a breath of cold air, in disbelief. This is the whereabouts of the method of becoming a saint through luck. Good. Li Yun nodded. Our Tianyin dynasty has been looking for this magical power for more than 1,000,000 years, but there has been no news. If it were not for the guidance of seniors today, I am afraid that no one would have thought that this magical power has been hidden in the treasure house. Bei Chenheng murmured. With this, Bei Chenheng suddenly felt strong confidence in his heart. He could finally stop worrying about his life, and could even go one step further. Take back his own position. After all, Father and Emperor sit down. Having been in that position for more than 5,000 years, it's time for a replacement. Fantasy, me. Create a secret building at the beginning. Author, Mavericks Flying. Chapter 44. Become a saint by luck. Bei Chenheng muttered softly, his eyes extremely bright. This is the secret technique of the Dali dynasty millions of years ago. It is extremely precious. It can be said to be a skill or a magical power. An ordinary person can become a saint instantly with the help of this method. It can be called a bug-level technique. There is an important prerequisite for using this technique, and that is luck, which can be the luck of a dynasty or a sect, as long as the luck is sufficient. Then you can borrow it from this method and become a saint immediately. The upper limit of this skill is that of a saint, which means that if the luck is strong enough, it can be used by one person, or even several people, at the same time. Then several peak saints were created. If you are not lucky enough, even if it is used, it may not lead to sainthood. It may only be the Holy Master, or it may only be the cultivation level of the heaven transformation realm. Of course, such a powerful magical power is not without its shortcomings. Its biggest shortcoming is that it cannot leave the sphere of influence of the sect or the dynasty. That is to say, within the sphere of influence, he is a saint. Outside the sphere of influence, they are useless people. And if the forces behind it are destroyed, this magical power will be ineffective. But even so, many people know that the method of becoming a saint through luck has huge drawbacks, but there are still countless people who want to get it because its value is too high. Create a saint out of thin air. The strength of saints in a holy land may not be the top combat power, but it is definitely high-level combat power and cannot be ignored. A few can be produced out of thin air. Who doesn't want it? It doesn't matter if you don't leave your sphere of influence. At least the strength is in place. Then, the Tianyin dynasty destroyed the Dali dynasty and turned the entire ruling area upside down. They did not even find a way to become a saint through luck. They even thought that this magical power was completely destroyed by the people of the Dali dynasty. Did not expect. After a million years, this magical power actually appeared again. Bai Qianheng's palms trembled. He raised his head, glanced at Li Yun, and asked softly, "How did the senior learn about the whereabouts of Luck Saint? Any information in Tianji Tower can only be obtained at a price." Li Yun chuckled, stretched out his hand, and said calmly, "The question you asked just now, take out 10 million top-quality spiritual stones, and I will tell you." Bai Qianheng. He is a poor man now. The inside of the storage ring is cleaner than his face. He can't even take out even one top-grade spiritual stone, let alone 10 million top-grade spiritual stones. No matter what, this transaction of senior is equivalent to saving junior's life. This junior will remember this great kindness in his heart. Bai Qianheng gave a deep salute and said sincerely, "If I go back this time, if this junior doesn't die, there must be a generous reward." Li Yun nodded. He felt quite emotional in his heart. In today's world, there are not many such conscientious people. If the senior has no other instructions, the junior will leave today. Bai Qianheng said again. After getting the whereabouts of the method of becoming a saint through luck, he couldn't wait to go back and verify it. If it is true. So what if this cultivation level is abandoned? Although the Tianyin dynasty is not in its heyday, relying on luck, it is still enough to become a saint, even if this strength is like the moon in the mirror. He doesn't care either. The worst case scenario is wasting all your efforts and rebuilding again. Go ahead. Li Yun nodded. After Bai Qianheng left, the lord of Dawang City also stood up and said goodbye. Watching the two of them go away. In the room, Lu Chensu walked out. She looked at Bai Qianheng's back and asked in confusion, "Senior, Bai Qianheng, since you know the shortcomings of your own skills, why not hide to the ends of the earth? Why rush to return to Tianyin dynasty?" He was anxious to go back and kill his father. Li Yun took a sip of tea and continued, "Besides, where can he hide with his holy lord level cultivation? Without the follow-up skills, he would not even be able to break through. Any saint from the Tianyin dynasty could capture him. This world is a fantasy world. The slightest clue can make the saint catch up in an instant. There is a huge difference in the realm. Trying to rely on saint master level cultivation to get rid of the saint's control is tantamount to wishful thinking. Then wouldn't he be sending himself to death if he went back?" Lu Chensu was puzzled. Tianyin dynasty is no worse than Deluo sword section in their dynasty. There are not only saints, but also saint kings, and maybe great saints as well. Even if Bai Qianheng has the method of borrowing luck to become a saint, what can he do? At most, he is the peak of a saint. If a saint king comes out, he can be killed with one hand. You don't understand this again. Li Yun smiled and said, "The dynasty is different from the section. The Baikan clan is the absolute heaven in the Tianyin dynasty. As long as they are a member of the Baikan clan, it will not matter whoever becomes the god emperor. It's just the left hand and the right hand. After all, the world belongs to their Baikan clan, and those ancestors will not care about it. For example, when Emperor Tianyin brutally killed his 8 sons, has anyone ever taken care of it? As long as the foundation is not harmed, the Tianyin dynasty will not be in chaos. Sometimes." Li Yun paused for a moment before continuing to speak calmly. "The family ties between royal families are weaker than you think. This principle is similar in every world." Lu Chensu nodded ignorantly. She has lived in Deluo Jianzong since she was a child. The sisters and fellow disciples are as close as one family. The master is also very good to her and others, regarding what Bei Chenheng has experienced. She said it was very confusing. It's normal that you don't understand. After Li Yun said this, he withdrew his gaze and looked at the balance of TNG points on his system panel. 26,000 more points. Delightful. This means that I have taken another solid step towards becoming the emperor. Wait until you save a little more and get there in one step. Fantasy, me. Create a secret building at the beginning. Author, Mavericks Flying. Chapter 45. 2 days later. Tianyan Dynasty. A stream of light streaked across the sky and headed straight to the treasure house of the palace. Be bold. Who dares to break into the palace? A guard stepped up to the sky, his energy and blood rumbling, his sharp edge revealed, holding a spear in his hand, trying to stop him. Roll. Bai Hung shouted softly. He pushed it out with one hand, and a huge handprint condensed out, covering 100 feet in radius, and it was instantly shot into the earth. Then, Bai Hung quickly walked away. Brother, just here. After Bei Chenheng left, another guard came over. He helped the man up and said seriously, in the palace, you should keep your eyes open. The man just now is His Highness the Ninth Prince. As the only son of the current God Emperor, who can you stop? Why must you stop His Highness the Ninth Prince? There is a ban in the palace, no flying allowed. The guard just now looked ugly, covered his chest and whispered. That depends on who. Another guard patted his shoulder and said helplessly. In front of the palace treasury, Bai Hung's figure walked down from the void. He came to the door, an identity token appeared in his hand, threw it into the void, and said lightly. Your Highness wants to go in, please open the door quickly. Yes. The void fluctuated, and a deep voice sounded. Before he finished speaking, lines on the stone door in front of him lit up, intertwined into a mysterious pattern, and slowly opened to both sides. Bai Hung raised his feet and stepped into it. Looking around, there was another shelf is packed into a large space. Most of the items displayed here are rare treasures, but in terms of value, they are not very precious. Really valuable things will not be placed here. Some are small items. There were also things sent from the gate as tribute from the cities below, and some were even left behind by the previous dynasty. For example, the Dali dynasty that had been destroyed before. Some things of little value but a pity to abandon were all messed up. It was thrown into the treasure house. It was rarely taken care of by anyone on weekdays, but now it looked like a mess. Benjian number. Bei Chenheng took out the jade token, glanced at the content, and murmured. The number Benjian is the number of the wooden frame in front of you. Bei Chenheng looked at them one by one. After half an hour, he stopped in front of a shelf and couldn't look away anymore. On this shelf, 2 big characters come into view. Astonishingly, it's the word Benjian. Longevity picture. Bei Chenheng uttered 3 words again. He stretched out his hand and pulled out the only picture scroll on the wooden frame. It was an ordinary picture scroll. Because a long time had passed, it already gave off an aura of decay. It seems that it will be damaged with the slightest touch. Bei Chenheng unfolded the scroll carefully. At the top of the scroll, the 3 characters longevity picture gradually came into view. Seeing these 3 characters, Bei Chenheng's pupils suddenly shrank. It's true. No matter whether the seniors lied to themselves or not, at least so far, all the information is correct. Whether it can work or not depends on the next step. Bai Hung took a deep breath, raised his palm, and the true energy in his body began to move in a strange way, and finally gathered in his palm. In his palm, the word Li formed. This is the method to activate the longevity chart. Only by using the special banning method used by the Dali dynasty at that time. Without this method, even if you get the longevity picture, it will not help at all. Because of this, the Tianyin dynasty has been looking for a million years, but has not found a way to become a saint by luck. Baikan Hung's palm fell and covered the longevity picture. Suddenly, with a buzz sound, the surface of the longevity diagram was like water, with a layer of ripples rippling, and then golden fonts flew out from it. They were densely arranged in the void, and golden rays of light shone down, making people dazzled. Enchanted. Gudong. Seeing this scene, Bei Chen-hung swallowed hard. That's right. Everything is as the senior said. Exactly. Now, what appears in front of him is the method of becoming a saint through luck. It is very simple to practice magical powers, not exercises. It requires almost no effort. All you need to do is learn to mobilize the Qi luck method. Bei Chen-hung quickly wrote down the content. Then, with a cold look, he clenched it with 5 fingers, and with a bang, he held it in his hand. The longevity picture turned into a cloud of smoke and dust, falling freely and spreading on the ground. After doing all this, Bei Chen-hung turned around and walked outside. Royal Palace. Bai Kaniyong, the god emperor of the Tianyin dynasty, was lying on the soft couch with his eyes closed, his fingers tapping the bed rhythmically, and he spoke hoarsely. Lu Zhen. The slave is here. Next to me, a thin man with a pale face and gloomy eyes quickly bowed. How long has the 9th prince been out? About 6 days. Lu Zhen said respectfully. 6 days. Bei Chenyang opened his eyes, a hint of coldness flashed in his eyes, and said in a cold voice, it's been too long. Where has he been during these 6 days? Reporting back to the god emperor, after His Highness the 9th prince left the palace, he went straight to Dawang city and stayed for a long time before returning. Lu Zhen said softly. Dawang city. Bei Chenyang looked cold, with a hint of murderous intent flashing in his eyes, and said in a cold voice, my prince, it seems his wings are stiff. I asked him to go to the Beiduan mountains to find out the reason why Ren Qingtu became a saint. But he went to Dawang city. Do you think that as my father is getting old, there is nothing I can do about him? As the god emperor, Bei Chenyang is tired of the feeling that things are not under his control. Your Majesty, please calm down. Lu Zhen whispered. After he finished speaking, he seemed to have thought of something and continued, I just received the news that His Highness 9th Prince is back. He seemed to be in a bad mood. When passing by the palace, he shot and seriously injured a guard. In the imperial palace, there has always been a prohibition against taking action. It seems that this incident of His Highness 9th Prince was just an unintentional mistake. These words. Lu Zhen said it very cleverly. On the surface, he was excusing Bai Kanheng, but in fact, he pushed Bai Kanheng to a dead end in one fell swoop. Right now, it was Bai Kaniyong's most sensitive period. His birthday Yuan is approaching, but he has not yet become a saint. He is just waiting to absorb his son's cultivation. Suddenly he heard that his son actually dared to hurt people in the palace. How could he not think more about it? What if his son wanted to imitate Lao Lu? If there is a rebellion, even if it is suppressed by him in the end, it will not sound good or look bad if it is spread in the future. Hurt someone in the palace. Bai Kaniyong slowly sat up, a domineering aura swept in all directions, his eyes opened and closed, cold light overflowed, and his movements exuded great power. Okay. Bai Kaniyong said 3 good words in a row. The rotten aura on his body was swept away. He raised his fingers and said in a cold voice. Invite him to the palace. Originally, he was still a little intolerant of this 9th son. After all, it was his last son. He wanted to let him live for a while. But now it seems that even his youngest son is beginning to have some problems. He has a disloyal heart and cannot stay any longer. Even if what Lu Zhen said is false, he is now willing to believe it is true. Because he wants to find an excuse for himself. The real reason is that he wants to become a saint. Just a son. He has no chance to be reborn and become a saint. He may only have this chance in this life. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Fantasy, me. Create a secret building at the beginning. Author, Mavericks Flying. Chapter 46. Yes. Lu Zhen bowed and saluted, and said respectfully, I will go and tell His Highness the Ninth Prince to enter the palace. With that said, Lu Zhen turned around and walked out of the palace. He had just walked out of the entrance of the hall. Under the steps, on a white jade square, he spotted a figure standing proudly. Bei Chenheng had his hands behind his back. He had a tall figure and black hair spread like a waterfall. The breath is Yuan Ting Yuji. Ninth Prince came down just in time. Seeing Bei Chenheng's figure, Lu Zhen's lips showed a sneer. He walked down the steps and came to Bei Chenheng's side. He joked the God Emperor was about to summon His Highness, but His Highness came without thinking. This tone is quite a bit like, I just want you to die, so you come to seek death yourself. Your Highness, please. Lu Zhen turned his body sideways and said with one hand. How is your father's health? Bai Chenheng didn't move his steps, his body was as still as a mountain. He turned his head, looked at Lu Zhen, and asked lightly. The God Emperor rules over hundreds of millions of miles of mountains and rivers, and his body naturally flourishes, just like the scorching sun shining in the sky for thousands of miles. Lu Zhen said without hesitation. Yes. Chenheng nodded with some emotion and said, my father is in great health. It has been 5,000 years. My 8 royal brothers have all taken a step forward, but my father is still alive. I think the 8 royal brothers should all miss their father very much when they are under Jiquan. Father, it's time to meet all the royal brothers. Lu Zhen looked horrified. The first half of the sentence was fine, but the second half of the sentence was shocking. What is this Ninth Highness going to do? Lu Zhen took half a step back, his voice and expression were fierce, and he shouted. Be bold. Your Majesty Ninth Prince, do you know what you are talking about? I'm just a domestic slave, who allows you to yell in front of me? Bai Chenheng took a step forward. His robes were not moving in the wind, and his hair was dancing wildly. A terrifying aura swept out, and the might of the Holy Lord level overwhelmed all directions. Bang! As soon as he pointed, a long rainbow formed, tearing the space apart, and there was a harsh roar, and he quickly rushed towards Lu Zhen. How dare he? Lu Zhen's hair stood on end, and all his souls were gone. This is a royal palace. Behind is the main hall, where God Emperor Tianyan rests, and the God Emperor is in the hall. This Ninth Prince actually dares to attack him. Is he tired of living? Or he knew he was going to die, so he wanted to make a last struggle? Zheng. Lu Zhen didn't have time to think too much. The dust in his hand was swaying, and thousands of threads were entangled out. They were so dense that they covered the sky and filled the sky. He wanted to block this blow. Rumble. A deafening roar came out. The stream of light penetrated everything, broke through all obstacles, and passed through the floating dust. Then it continued to hit Lu Zhen on the shoulder. The blow was so terrifying that half of his body was broken into pieces. Blood is flying and bones are white. Like a broken sack, Lu Zhen flew out and hit the white jade stone steps behind. The huge impact shook the entire hall. God Emperor! God Emperor! Lu Zhen stood up unsteadily. He didn't even have time to wipe off the blood on his body. He ran toward the hall with difficulty and shouted loudly. His Highness Ninth Prince is rebelling. He entered the palace and wanted to kill our family. He asked the God Emperor to make the decision for our family. Tread. 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 Behind Lu Zhen. Bei Chen Hung put his hands behind his back, walking slowly and slowly, step by step, up the steps, towards the main hall. When he entered the main hall, Lu Zhen was covered in blood and stood behind Bei Chen Yang. Stared at him coldly with a pair of resentful eyes. And Bei Chen Yang, still dressed in regular clothes, was lying on the soft cave, with a calm face, as if he didn't notice everything that just happened. Only a pair of cold eyes betrayed his inner thoughts. Seeing Bei Chen Hung come in, he spoke indifferently and uttered 2 words. "Kneel down." The voice was filled with supreme majesty, leaving no room for doubt. When the words fell to the ground, a heavy pressure fell from the sky, as if an ancient demonic mountain had crossed the long river of time and crashed down. Boom! There was a loud noise. In the main hall, cymbals flashed crazily, and then collapsed suddenly, rocks flew, and smoke filled the air. In the dust, Baikan Hung still stood proudly. Seeing this scene, Lu Zhen's eyes became more and more happy. It's obvious. Just. Then just. The more you do this, the greater the anger in the God Emperor's heart will be. In the end, your end will be very miserable. After you lose all your cultivation, it's best not to fall into our hands. Otherwise, if you do, our family will definitely let you know what it means to be unable to survive and unable to survive. Your 6th emperor brother was just like you back then. His final fate was that his soul was broken up and he was beyond redemption. From this we can see that rebellion is a taboo in Baikan Hung's heart. No one is allowed to touch it. Even his own son. On top of the ruins, Baikan Hung was as steady as a mountain. He still had his hands behind his back, calm and conceited. His expression did not change at all. He raised his eyes, looked at Baikan Yang, and spoke slowly. "Father, you are old. It's time to abdicate. Fantasy, me. Create a secret building at the beginning." Author, Mavericks Flying. Chapter 47. Is it? Bei Chen Yang slowly stood up, his face as deep as water, his voice seemed to come from the 9 nether hell, without any emotion, and extremely indifferent. He stood up, put his hands behind his back, looked down at Bei Chen Hung. "Your Majesty, you should understand that everything you have today is given to you by me. What I give to you is yours. If I don't give it to you, you can't take it away." Boom! As soon as he finished speaking, the sky and the earth rioted, and the lightning flickered and destroyed everything. The palace within 1,000 feet radius turned into a sea of thunder, with thunder and light everywhere. Bei Chen Yang stood on the sea of thunder, as if he was the reincarnation of a thunder god. Don't look directly at it. Don't. Blasphemy. Everything you have done today has crossed my bottom line. It is time for me to take back everything I have given you. When did my father ever draw a line? Bei Chen Hung raised the corners of his lips, sneered, and said indifferently, "You don't need to take back everything your father has given you. I will give everything back to you today. You are asking for death." Baikan Yang's eyes turned cold. How many years has it been? Thousands of years have passed, and no one has dared to speak to him like this for a long time. The last person who said this was probably his 6th son. Anyone who provokes me will be doomed in the end, even my son will not be an exception. I would like to try it. Baikan Hung chuckled lightly. Buzz. A soft sound came out. In the field, Bei Chen Heng's aura reversed, and a majestic true energy spread in all directions, and his aura began to retreat rapidly. Holy Lord Realm. Celestial Phenomenon Realm. Heavenly Transformation Realm. You dare! Baikan Yang shouted angrily. His old face was almost twisted together, and his white hair was dancing wildly. It was extremely frightening, like an angry lion out of its cage, its evil aura covering the sky and the sun. He rushed down from the steps, thinking to stop all this. I never expected that Baikan Heng would dare to abolish his cultivation. What would he do if he abolished his cultivation? Right now, he was only a thin line away from the Holy Realm, swallowing up Baikan Heng with his cultivation level. He has 8 levels of hope that he can become a saint. 8 levels. This can be said to be a sure way to become a saint. Now, Baikan Heng has abolished his cultivation level in one fell swoop. He will be reduced to a useless person, but he will become a saint. His hope will be cut off from now on. In addition, he is getting old, and even if he takes life-extending pills, he will not be able to last long. In the remaining time, there is no time to find another genius and train him to the Holy Lord level, and the genius is also it's not that easy to find. He has trained Baikan Heng alone for more than 1,000 years. How many resources and efforts were spent on this? Baikan Heng's actions at this moment not only shattered his 1,000-year plan, but also pulled him back. Die with him. Boom. The last breath disappeared. Bai Chen Heng transformed from a middle-aged man into an old man, with pale hair, wrinkles on his face, and a stooped body, standing tremblingly. Without his cultivation, his life, just like a candle in the wind, it will be extinguished at any time. He looks older than Bai Chen Yang. At this point, he knows that his life has come to an end. Bai Chen Heng is still not worried. He looks at his furious father and gently laughed. He. Ha ha ha. From a chuckle, it turned into a wild laugh, spreading for miles around. Father, how does this feel? Baikan Heng said happily. Thousands of years of depression, all gone in one day. Watching one by one the royal brothers step into the palace at their feet, and finally disappear, today he can be regarded as helping them fulfill a long-cherished wish. The most important thing is to lose yourself. A part of it? His father's idea of becoming a saint in this life is destined to never be realized again. He came here today just to let his father watch his hope of becoming a saint pass away bit by bit in front of him. No matter how hard he tried, he could not reverse the defeat. This kind of despair was experienced by the 8 royal brothers and himself back then. Today, my father should also experience it. Evil creature. Baikan Yang was furious. He exuded a godlike and demonic aura. His whole body seemed to be erupting from a volcano, and his energy shot through the sky. The ground beneath his feet was shaking violently, and terrifying cracks were opened. This scene, it's so scary. It's creepy. At this moment, Bai Chen Yang seems to be crazy. His eyes are red, his body is filled with evil energy, and he keeps breathing heavily. Thousands of years of planning have been ruined in one day. Everything is gone. The initiator of all this is the rebellious son in front of me. Even if it is his own son, but his chance of becoming a saint has been cut off, he has now become an out-and-out mortal enemy. His soul must be broken up and he will fall into a place of eternal destruction. Fang, it can relieve the anger in your heart. Come to death. Bai Chen Yang grabbed it with his big hand and held it in the air. Black thunder struck down from the sky and gathered in his palm, turning into a pitch-black spear. The moment the spear appeared, a breath of destruction swept through the world. And came out. This spear became the only one in the world. Boom. There was a loud noise. The spear penetrated the void and quickly shot towards Baikan Heng. Before he could kill him, an extremely suppressed aura fell first. At this moment, the whole space became sticky. There is no way to avoid it, no way to hide. We can only take it hard. In the current state of Bai Chen Heng, an ordinary person, how can he take this blow? Obviously. Bai Chen Yang has the intention of killing. He wants to kill the 9th person in front of him. My son, I will completely crush my bones and spread my ashes to vent the hatred in my heart. Fantasy, me. Create a secret building at the beginning. Author, Mavericks Flying. Chapter 48. Boom. The thunder spear fell to the ground. The thunder was like Wang Yang, boundless as far as the eye could see. The lightning flashed, moving the 9 heavens, flooding the earth. It was extremely terrifying. The earth and rocks were scorched wherever it passed. The traces of the original hall were completely wiped out. If it were not for the formation guard, most of the entire palace will be destroyed. With such power, let alone Bei Chen Hung, an ordinary person. Even if he is at his peak, he may not be able to block it. For this attack, Bei Chen Yang has absolute confidence, regardless of his failure. Saint, but he absorbed not only the strength of his 8 sons, but also some geniuses he had collected over the years. These people practiced Nai Yuan Shenju secretly. In the end, they all became his nourishment. With the accumulation of countless people's cultivation, it is invincible among its peers. It's over. Bei Cheniang's voice was cold. Even so, he still couldn't understand his hatred. The anger in his chest was burning, and the demonic flames all over his body were beating like an ancient ferocious beast that wanted to choose people to devour. It would be too easy to die if my path to sainthood is cut off. Bei Chenyang raised his hand and grabbed it. Among the thunder in the sky, he caught a lonely figure. What's going on? He frowned. Logically speaking, Bei Chenhung should be dead. He wanted to capture his soul, but why didn't there be any reaction? Could it be? A guess arose in Bei Chenyang's mind. Just now, his blow caused the opponent's soul to fly away. This possibility is very low. He is very clear about his own strength. No one knows better than him how powerful the spear just now is. No matter what, the soul should stay. Something is wrong. Bei Chenyang narrowed his eyes, piercing the sea of thunder, wanting to see what happened. Before he could see the situation clearly, a figure appeared in the sea of thunder. I walked out as if taking a leisurely stroll. How can it be? Bei Chenyang frowned, a look of disbelief flashed in his eyes, and said in a deep voice, "You're not dead." Disappointed, my father. Bai Hung still looked old. He put his hands behind his back and climbed up the steps. When he fell down one step at a time, his body, which was originally like a dead tree, suddenly heard a sound like a mountain roaring and a tsunami. The true energy in his body rumbled, and the flesh and blood essence, like wolf smoke, penetrated the high sky and scattered the clouds in all directions. Centered on his position, the fate of the entire Tianyan dynasty seemed to be pulled, gathering from all directions. From above his head, it turned into a whirlpool, pouring down. My son has long said that my father has held this position for 5,000 years and it is time to abdicate in favor of someone worthy of his position. Bai Hung is still unhurried. With every step he takes, the aura on his body becomes stronger. The cultivation level that was originally abandoned has grown rapidly. Body forging realm. Yuan Qi realm. Celestial realm. Holy Lord realm. Saint. Boom. Taking the last step, Bei Chenhung came to Bei Chenyang. He looked directly at his father, with no wave in his eyes, and a terrifying aura swept out of his body. The power of the saint suppressed the heaven and the earth. Bang! A terrifying power rushed towards him. Bei Chenyang's body trembled as if he had been hit hard. Then his face turned pale and he flew backwards. With a rumbling sound, he crashed through countless palaces and splashed smoke and dust all over the sky. Bei Chenyang lying on the ruins, with blood bleeding from the corner of his mouth, he stood up tremblingly, his hair was messy on his shoulders, and he looked a little hysterical. Impossible. No. Can. Able. I have worked so hard and planned for thousands of years and still haven't become a saint. The techniques you practice are all incomplete and have no follow-up. How can you become a saint before me? Wrong. You have abolished your cultivation, why on earth did you become a saint? Bai Chenyang was on the verge of going crazy. He pursued his lifelong pursuit, but in the end he was in vain. However, his son jumped out of the chessboard with a chess piece in his hand. It was just that he jumped out of the chessboard. He even exchanged the identities of the chess players and the chess pieces. This change made him almost want to vomit blood. In this world, nothing is impossible. Baiken Hung turned around. At this moment, he was as handsome as jade, with a tall figure and a jade crown on his head. Judging from his appearance, he was only in his early 20s. Anyone who looked at him couldn't help but praise him. What a good man in troubled times. Young master. Since he has reached the level of saint cultivation, his longevity has increased by tens of thousands of years out of thin air. His original appearance of a middle-aged man has completely become younger. In a sense, he has become a child again. As long as the Tianyan dynasty is immortal, when he stays in the Tianyan dynasty, he can have everything that a saint should have, even longevity. From this point, we can also see the horror of the method of becoming a saint through luck. Something must be wrong. Bai Chaniang's voice was hoarse. After a moment, he suddenly raised his head, stared at Bai Chen Hung with his eyes, and squeezed out a few words with difficulty. The method of becoming a saint through luck. Back then, the forbidden arts of the Dali dynasty had a great reputation throughout the world. Naturally, the Tianyan dynasty was also greedy for it. After destroying Dali, they spent all their efforts searching for it, but found nothing in the end. Until Baiken Yongdeng. He also looked for it, but unfortunately he couldn't find it. But what he didn't expect was that today, the method of becoming a saint through luck would actually appear in the hands of his son. Give it to me. Give me the method of becoming a saint through luck. Whatever you want, I will give it to you. Baiken Yang staggered forward, with a look of longing in his eyes. After the hope of becoming a saint was shattered, a glimmer of light emerged in his heart again. I want. A sneer appeared at the corner of Bai Chen Heng's mouth, and he said lightly, Father, go and accompany some of the royal brothers. Big discount on reading books during the Dragon Boat Festival. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Fantasy, me. Create a secret building at the beginning. Author, Mavericks Flying. Chapter 49. What? Baiken Yang's footsteps were frozen in place. Boom. The sky and the earth collapsed. Baiken Hung took action. He stretched out his hand, overwhelming the sky and the earth. The holy power spread thousands of miles, submerging the entire imperial city. He held his finger in the void, and Baiken Yang was lifted up directly. He is called the Holy Lord Realm. Invincible. But facing the saint, there is no resistance at all. This is an absolute suppression. There is a huge difference between the two, not only in lifespan, but also in strength. Even among the talented and beautiful Tian Xiao, it is also impossible to jump from the Holy Lord realm to challenge. Because from Holy Lord to Saint, this is a qualitative change. Put, presumptuous. Baiken Yang's face turned red, and fear arose in his heart. After living for 5,000 years, he felt the threat of death for the first time. He knew that his son was similar to himself and could do anything. He is your father, your life is, for you. Bei. Chen Hung smiled disdainfully, clenched his fingers slightly, and said calmly, so, I will also keep my father alive. You dare. Baiken Yang's eyes widened and he shouted loudly. What's wrong with me? Bai Chen Hung opened his mouth and was about to say something when a high-pitched voice pierced the sky and resounded throughout the imperial city. Escort. Come and escort us quickly. The ninth prince rebelled. Lu Zhen hid in a corner, activated all his true energy, and shouted loudly. Bai. Chen Hung frowned, and shot out with one hand. A black dragon lay across it. Its whole body was condensed with sword light. The dragon's tail flung out, beating Lu Zhen and the palace in front of him into ashes. Although Lu Zhen was dead, but his voice before his death had an effect. In the imperial city, streams of light rose into the sky. Countless soldiers came from all directions, surrounding the entire void, and the powerful aura condensed together, making the air thicker. With a casual glance, you can see dozens of Holy Lord level figures. Among them, some are members of Baikan Heng's clan, some are worshippers of the Tianyan dynasty, or are guests. They rushed over immediately and saw the scene in the palace. Countless people were in chaos on the spot. His Highness the Ninth Prince actually pinched the God Emperor's neck and lifted him in the air. This is what he was doing. What? Patri sighed. Is His Highness the Ninth Prince really rebelling? If it's not true, is it still fake? Isn't this scenario obvious enough? Baikan Heng is too presumptuous. His actions will definitely make all the holy places in the world laugh at our Tianyan dynasty. Judging from the momentum of His Highness the Ninth Prince, it seems that he has become a saint. With this level of cultivation, it seems reasonable to become the God Emperor. Besides, the current God Emperor has been in power for more than 5,000 years and it is time to give way. After this incident, no matter what the outcome is, it will become a stain on the Tianyan dynasty. Does the Tianyan dynasty still have few stains? Don't forget how the 8 His Highnesses suddenly disappeared. You mean? Be careful. Many worshippers and guests were talking about it. They don't care who becomes the God Emperor. After all, they are outsiders. It is not their turn to dictate matters in the dynasty. As long as the dynasty gives them training resources, it is enough. But the people of the Tianyan royal family don't think so anymore. Some people think that Baikan Heng's move has insulted the royal family's face, some think it is reasonable, and even more are eager to take Baikan Heng's place. But no matter what people think in their hearts, none of them took a step forward. They are all waiting and watching. What's more important is to worry about Baikan Heng's cultivation. He is actually a saint. If the ancestor doesn't take action, everyone here is no match for Baikan Heng. Even if they swarm up, they will be slapped to death. It seems. Baikan Heng glanced at everyone, turned around, and spoke slowly. The will of God and the people are not on your side. It's time for your father to hit the road, don't keep the 8 royal brothers waiting. Said. Baikan Heng raised his other hand. Live hand. Baikan Yang shouted angrily. He struggled fiercely, and the true energy in his body rumbled, trying to break through the restraints. Unfortunately, Baikan Heng's palm was as if it were made of steel. He did not move at all. He could only watch helplessly as the opponent clicked with one finger. In his Danshan Ki, puff. There was a soft sound. As if a blister had been pricked, all Baikan Heng's cultivation disappeared in an instant. Without his cultivation, his whole person became sluggish. His already old body could not even straighten his waist at this moment. It became extremely difficult. Baikan Heng released his palms. With a bang sound, Baikan Yang fell from the void. He was immediately dying. He opened his mouth and wanted to say something, but in the end he only spit out 2 words. Hatred. A gentle breeze blew. The words behind Baikan Yang were blown away by the wind before they were spoken. This moment, millions of people fell silent. The cold and horrifying atmosphere pressed down on everyone's heart, making everyone shudder. They looked at Baikan Heng's back and felt a trace of fear in their hearts. Baikan Heng stood there motionless, as if waiting for something. Everyone here knows what he is waiting for. At the moment, although Baikan Yang's Iaway was abolished, if he is rescued in time, he can extend his life by 10.5 days if he is lucky, and 1 or 2 days if he is not lucky. But now, Baikan Heng is standing there, who dares to rescue him? Everyone could only watch helplessly as Baekhyang's longevity came to an end bit by bit. His fall. From this point of view, it can be said that it is related to Baekhyang, but it can also be said that it has nothing to do with it. After all, Baekhyang just lost his cultivation. He didn't kill anyone, he just stood still. So, patricide. No one would dare wear this name on his head. Even if someone has such an idea. But I didn't dare to say it. Fantasy, me. Create a secret building at the beginning. Author, Mavericks Flying. Chapter 50. Half an hour later. In ruins. Baekhyang closed his eyes unwillingly, and the breath of life on his body became weaker and weaker until it disappeared. During this period of time, none of the generals, clansmen, or ancestors of the Tianyan dynasty stepped forward, completely crushing the little hope left in his heart. After a while, the atmosphere became increasingly solemn. Who among the people present is not a cultivator? It can be said that almost everyone is well aware of the disappearance of the God Emperor's aura. Now God Emperor Tianyan is gone. Everyone would be excited about an empty position. After all, becoming the God Queen not only has skills, but also resources, and so many conditions. As long as your qualifications are not too poor, there is almost no problem in becoming the peak Holy Lord. With better luck, even becoming a saint is not impossible. Some of the Tianyan royal family had some thoughts in their hearts, but they did not dare to speak out. The deterrent power Baekhyang gave them was too great. Once they opened their mouths, there is no guarantee that it will not be liquidated. At the moment, being wise and protecting yourself is the right way. After some time, Baekhyang's body was almost cold. An indifferent voice slowly sounded from the void and reached everyone's ears. My father passed away, and I am deeply saddened. However, the country cannot be without a king for a day. From today on, I will ascend the throne as emperor. Do you have any objections? From the meaning of the words, it seems that they are discussing. But from the sound, this sentence is more like a notice. These words are very clear, I want to be the God Emperor. Those who are not convinced can stand up. For a moment, everyone looked at each other. After a brief silence, a general reacted first. He knelt down on one knee in the void and said loudly, "My dear, pay homage to the God Emperor, and wish the God Emperor eternal life." Damn it! Many people are blowing their beards and staring. This wallflower must have fallen too quickly. Many people haven't made up their minds yet. You have already started to kneel down and lick it? Seeing someone taking the lead. The remaining people, even if they are unwilling to do so, they had to hold their noses and admit it. Baekhyang's strength was there, and even if they wanted to rebel, they couldn't make waves at all. Pay homage to the God Emperor and wish him eternal life. Pay homage to the God Emperor and wish him eternal life. Pay homage to the God Emperor and wish him eternal life. Pay homage to the God Emperor and wish him eternal life. The huge sounds, gathered together, were like a whole, extremely terrifying, and the power penetrated the sky, making people tremble. Look around. Countless people all became shorter. The very center. Baekhyang was the only one who stood tall and proud. Everyone, be safe. Baekhyang said. At this moment, his thoughts were clear, and his heart was extremely happy. After many years of pursuit, once he realized it, he had a dream-like feeling, which was extremely unreal. He used to think more about how to survive. As for how to survive, becoming the God Emperor was something he could only secretly think about when he dreamed about it at midnight. Unexpectedly, it came true today. He really became the God Emperor. Thanks to seniors. Baekhyang sighed in his heart. If there were no seniors, the person lying here today should be him. And the person who accepts the worship of hundreds of officials should be his father. I need to think carefully about how to repay the kindness of my seniors. Bai Chenheng was deep in thought. If Li Yun knew Bai Chenheng's thoughts, he would probably laugh out of his dreams. After thinking for a moment, Bai Chenheng turned around, glanced at the people in front of him, and said indifferently, "If you have nothing to do, please disperse. Please leave. I'm waiting to resign." After everyone left, things about the Tianyin dynasty also spread out, causing an uproar throughout the world. After all, the strength of a dynasty is not weak. As long as the position of God Emperor is smoothly transitioned, not many people will pay attention to it, but if it is not a smooth transition, it will be interesting. More importantly, there was also a shocking news. The method of becoming a saint through luck reappeared after millions of years and appeared in the hands of Bai Chenheng. This news made countless people start thinking. This technique does not belong to the Tianyin dynasty, but was originally created by the Dali dynasty. If you can get a copy of it, it will be useful to every holy land. This is an unprecedented enhancement. For a time, countless forces were ready to move. The main hall of Tianyin dynasty. Bai Chenheng sat cross-legged quietly. The previous main hall has been destroyed. If it wants to be reused, it must be rebuilt and then the formations must be installed. The whole process will not be completed in less than a year or two. During this time, he temporarily lived in another hall. Now, Bai Chenheng was thinking about the aftermath. The previous generation of the God Emperor had fallen, and many things had not been explained. It was inevitable that some people would have their own little thoughts. Therefore, he must suppress some signs immediately, otherwise, things will change later. While he was deep in thought, suddenly, a pressure came from all directions. It locked him in place. No matter how much he struggled, it was to no avail. Saint King. Bai Chenheng was horrified. He experienced the feeling that his father had experienced before, and now he experienced it again. It was extremely exciting. This breath. Bai Chenheng's heart trembled. From this pressure, he noticed a familiar aura, which was the aura of the skills that only the Tianyin royal family could practice. The person coming should be a certain ancestor of the Tianyin dynasty. Upon noticing this, Bai Chenheng breathed a sigh of relief. He is no longer struggling, trying to calm himself down. What he needs to do has been done. If this mysterious ancestor wants to raise an army to hold him accountable, he probably showed up a long time ago. I'm probably not here because of my father's affairs. I don't know which ancestor came out of seclusion, and my unfilial descendants have been missed. Please forgive me, ancestor. Bai Chenheng said respectfully. Bai Can Peak. In the void, the three words Bai Can Peak rang out from all directions. The sound was loud, like thunder rolling, making people unable to help but feel their blood boiling. It turns out to be the 13th ancestor. Bai Chenheng's heart tightened. This ancestor is not an easy person to talk to. When he was the God Emperor, he started many wars. He is definitely worthy of the word martial emperor. I don't know if the 13th patriarch came to the palace today, but what orders do you have? Bai Chenheng asked softly without making a move. Hand over the method of becoming a saint through luck, and I will protect your position as God Emperor for 10,000 years. In the void, Bai Can Peak's voice came again. Ah! Bai Chenheng heard this. He sneered in his heart. Is that really the case? When the clan was fighting each other, these ancestors did not come forward. When the method of becoming a saint through luck appeared, they immediately jumped out, which was a little too impatient.